he sat us all down in a room and introduced himself. Hey, I'm the group sergeant major, blah blah blah. And he asked us all to step outside, and that was when we were doing the tour. So we went outside and we were doing our tour of the team rooms. And I come back and like my wife's like crying. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like, what did he say to you? And she's like, he told us that we should look around the room, and that in the next 3 to 4 years, at least like 25% of your husbands are not going to be around anymore. And he was right, man.
The following is a conversation with Carlton C.J. Joyner. CJ is someone who truly embodies resilience and had everything stacked against him from the very day he was born. Despite a rough upbringing, he found his calling in the military, where he went on to have a very successful career as a Green Beret. CJ is a combat veteran with multiple trips to the Middle East, a Bronze Star with Valor recipient, Purple Heart recipient, honor grad of his Ranger School class, Special Forces sniper, intelligence sergeant, and many more, but above all, a shining example of a great husband and father, and someone who carries with him a no excuses mentality. Cool, brother. So let's kind of start from the beginning. You and I have talked about your past pretty extensively, and it's a very good story that I feel like a lot of guys, that have had some hardships throughout their lives and persevered or they're still within that period, can get a lot of inspiration from this. So run me down, where were you born? Where'd you grow up, man?
Oh, man. So I was born in California, so the Bay Area, Oakland, California to be specific. So I don't know if you've been to the Bay Area. I don't know if you've been to Oakland, but it's not the greatest towns as far as crime is concerned, or as far as the amount of good people that are living there. So pretty rough area. It's actually where a lot of my family still lives, in the Bay Area. But yeah, I was born there. 1991 was the year. Tupac was still around. Biggie Smalls was still hanging out. We had East Coast versus West Coast. I was repping West Coast right out the womb. So born to mom that had a pretty serious addiction problem, actually. She left me in the hospital when I was a couple days old. And dad was, not in the picture at the time. Was in and out of jail. Also an addict. And so I went from being in the hospital. They called next of kin, which was my grandma. My grandma picked me up on my dad's side, and then she was older at the time, and so she couldn't take really good care of me. So I ended up going into foster care for a while. So
gotcha. And what age were you in when you were in foster care?
So I was in a couple different places in foster care. So up until I was about 2.5 years old, almost 3 years old, in foster care until I finally got adopted. I got adopted by my aunt and uncle, actually, and they were out in New Mexico. So I ended up moving to New Mexico around the age of 3 or so.
Okay. And how was that growing up with them? Like, what were your first memories? Do you remember like the time where you got adopted by them officially and kind of got to the house and everything?
No, I was too little at that time, but growing up with them was awesome. I had 3 older brothers, so that was a huge plus. Growing up with some brothers, getting that brotherly experience, and then kind of just growing up out in the middle of nowhere in the East Mountains of New Mexico. So the story how my aunt and uncle ended up in New Mexico was my brother, actually, my oldest brother, he ended up getting involved into some gangs at a young age, and he ended up getting stabbed. So they ended up moving to New Mexico to kind of escape it all, and so that's how they ended up there.
Wow. And what was life like for you growing up, man? What were you into?
Yeah, dude, I was just a outside kid. Like you have outside dogs. I was just like an outside kid. So I was, anytime we got home, it was like, hey, go outside. And so just went outside. I used to just collect rocks, dig holes, play Army a lot. I used to pretend that I was going to war with Russia a lot. That was kind of like my favorite game to play. I don't know. I used to just like dig holes, bury toys, and yeah, man, had a rock collection. This is a regular ass kid. Catch bugs, throw them in spider webs. Had a dog named Whiskey, and he used to just follow me around everywhere. had a tree house, clubhouse thing. I just kind of just cut some branches out of a tree, and yeah, just a mountain kid. That was pretty much
Okay.
it.
So no sports or anything like that?
No, man, we lived too far out in the country, so it wasn't really making a lot of sense for us to play sports. My parents, they work like an hour away, and so they would commute every day, and so pretty much we rode the bus, which was a 45-minute bus ride to school. And so by the time we got home, it was dinner time, and then pretty much my parents were getting home, so that was
Gotcha.
it. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, what is the thing that got you first interested in like joining the military or kind of wanting to do more?
Yeah, I would say big thing was I was just looking for a way out in a lot of ways. So I ended up getting in a lot of trouble in my early teenage years. Left home about the age of 14, so I kind of picked up and left. Went on my own. I ended up moving up to Albuquerque, which is the big town in New Mexico, and got involved with some gangs there. Got involved with some small time dealing and stealing, robbing, that kind of stuff. So I got pretty caught up in that lifestyle for a while. Then kind of just got really really deep into it, and I think I just finally had a realization one day that I needed to make a change. And so I had actually a buddy who was a really good friend of mine, and I was actually living with him at the time, just kind of intermittently in between running the streets, and then I'd stay at his house for a little while. And he was a really good influence, kind of more wise for his age than the rest of us. The rest of us had our heads up our asses, and he had just got his nursing license right out of high school. So he was like the only one out of our friend group that graduated, and so he was working as a nurse at the time, and he kind of saw what I was getting into, was kind of trying to like mentor me a little bit, and was like, hey man, we should like move out of state. I think that's the only way you're ever gonna like get up on your feet. And he's like, I'm moving. You're more than welcome to come with me. So I moved up to Salt Lake City, brother. Salt Lake City, home of the Mormons. So we picked up one weekend. We drove straight through to Salt Lake City. I sold the last little bit of drugs that I had. It ended up being like about $3,500 that I saved up, and took that money and went up there and visited. It was just like the most quiet, like quaint, peaceful town. Just really like nice people. And so I was like, yeah, man, this is what I need. So I headed out to Salt Lake City and never looked back, really. Didn't really like tell anyone. Just kind of packed a suitcase and what I had left and just left, man. Didn't look back. And so long answer to a question, but Andrew had been looking at going on a mission to go for the Mormon Church. And my whole thing was, since I dropped out of high school, I was like, I'm going to join the military. So I started looking at options. And through that process, I ended up convincing Andrew. He's a fifth group guy now. He's on his way out, but he was the main dive instructor over there for a while down in Key West. And he saw that I was interested in the military, so he started researching it. And so then I was looking at the pararescue program. I wanted to do the Superman program. I didn't know how to fucking swim. And so we started training together pretty heavily, and I think he kind of fell in love with the idea of joining up. And then through our collective effort of training together, we kind of both stumbled upon, Green Berets and that mission set. And we were both kind of like, just young dudes, just like, yeah, that sounds fucking badass. I'm going to overthrow government, fucking conduct unconventional warfare. And so, yeah, man, but it was good times, man. A lot of, I worked 2 jobs, went to the gym twice a day, trained like a freaking idiot. I bought my first pair. What's that?
I want to kind of go back and unpack some of that stuff, man.
Yeah.
So, obviously that's really where like the tumultuous time really picked up. So you said you left your home at 14. You mentioned dropping out of high school. I have seen that happen firsthand with my brother, with other people in my life. But in your situation, man, what kind of led up to that? Like, how did it start, and what kind of got you caught up into that world?
Yeah, it's really pretty simple now that I look back at it. At the time, it wasn't so simple. You know, like your brain's developing and you run strictly on impulse. You know, you can't
Yeah.
control yourself. So, you know, my brain wasn't fully developed, so I was just interested in like what I wanted then. You know, and so at that time, you know, it was girls, it was weed, it was drinking, it was partying with friends, right? And it was a slow decay. It wasn't like I just like one day I was like fully head in. It started with, you know, I mean, honestly, it started with, you know, drinking on the weekends with my brothers. You know, real kind of just simple, like, you know, harmless kind of thing. You know, 8 or 9. You know, try my first beer with my brothers, and it's kind of like a ritual thing. And then, you know, maybe I'm 10, 11. Hey, like, hey, you try this weed, man. Like, you know, and I would only do it with my brothers. You know, and then that slope, you know, that level of interest just grows more and more. You know, and then you get around people who are doing it at a much higher level, and then it just becomes like it just feeds you, you know. So in high school, you know, it used to be I would only do it with my brothers, drinking and smoking and whatnot, and then you start meeting friends in high school, and then you know, it's the cool thing to do. So you know, I wanted to hang out with chicks, I wanted to drink, I wanted to smoke, and then that's all you care about. Like, what's school good for? You know, you can't put any of that stuff into perspective because, you know, the immediate satisfaction comes from the drinking and the smoking and hanging out with girls. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And what was the, so you moved out at 14. Did you drop out of high school like freshman year then, or when did you
So
decide to
yeah,
drop out?
it was my sophomore year. So I moved out and I still continue. I ended up living with a friend and his dad for a while, and I kind of felt like a burden to them. So that's when I was still going to school because he went to the same school as me. So I was driving with him, and I kind of kept it, you know, still, uh, you know, I still kept good grades, and you know, up to that point, I was an honor student. I was in all AP classes, and you know, I had all, you know, I think I dropped out. You know, I think in sophomore year, I was doing trig. You know, so I was well, you know, well prepared. You know, with intelligence. I just was focused on other things. So yeah, it was right after my sophomore year. I felt like a burden to them, and so I didn't want to keep living in his house. I kind of felt like a piece of shit. And so I had another buddy who was like on a completely different track, and he's the one who kind of got me like, hey man, I'm staying in this house with these dudes in Albuquerque. You know, it's this like small gang or whatever. Like, you should, you know, come hang out. And then, you know, that was the gateway. It's like, oh, these guys are cool. Like, they don't give a shit about anything. Like, they don't even have jobs. You know, this is sick. Like, let's do it. Like, do hood rat shit with my friends. So, yeah.
And then you mentioned, you know, the point that it really started to turn around was when Andrew was like, hey, we just got to move, right?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
How did Andrew like find you? How did that even come to be?
Yeah, so we went to school together. So we went to high school together. And so we kind of had, you know, interconnected social circles. And so the buddy who actually kind of got me full fledged into doing all the, you know, the hood rat shit, it was actually his really good friend. Their families were friends. And so that's kind of where it all stemmed from, or how we met. And yeah, man, it's like one of those things. You look back on it now, I didn't think much of it then, but I mean, honestly, like Andrew probably saved my life, like at that time. Like, if it wasn't for him, I'd probably be in freaking jail, you know. So
Yeah,
yeah,
legitimately.
yeah, legit, yeah. Well, it's not even, yeah. There's no denying it.
Damn, that's awesome. So you moved to Utah. You start training and prepping for the PJ pipeline. You mentioned your training. You kind of trained like an asshole. What were you
Yeah,
doing? What kind of stuff were you doing to get ready for the military in general?
yeah. So I always tell the story. So my first pair of running shoes were a used pair of shoes from a Goodwill that were $5. Because at the time when I moved up to Utah, I had that little bit of money that I saved. All that got, you know, went away pretty quick. You know how that goes. And I had a job as a bagger, making, you know, $6.75 an hour, and you know, working, you know, full time, but you know, it wasn't much. And so I went to Goodwill and I saw these shoes, and I was like, you know, I'm gonna buy them. I'm gonna start running. And they were size nines. I wear a size 10.5 shoe, and so they were too small. And how I started training, man, honestly, it was literally. So I had a lot of like anger when I was younger. You know, dealing with everything. Kind of felt like a fuck up. You know, you kind of felt like a failure. and that was kind of like a fire that fed me a lot of times where, I'd be sitting up at night and I couldn't sleep. You feel like you're not going anywhere in life, and I'd put on those size 9 shoes and I would just like go walk around the neighborhood. And we lived up in the heights of Salt Lake City, so it kind of overlooked the city. So there's really steep hills up there. So at nighttime, I used to just walk around at night, and then eventually, like, I'd get these like angry feelings, where I would just be upset, and I would just start running as fast as I could, and I would run up these hills until I just couldn't run anymore, and I would just do that until I exhausted myself and I got tired enough to sleep. And so I used to do that all the time at night, and then eventually it was like I could just run further. I'd get mad and I'd just keep running and running and running, and then I just kept running those hills, and then eventually I really started liking running, and that transitioned into me like using it to clear my head a lot of times and make myself feel better. And so I found this memorial park, actually, where they have it's like a veteran memorial park, and I used to run around that park, and it was like a 6.5 mile loop, I want to say, up and down the road. It's beautiful, like right in the middle of this canyon. And I used to go run there, and I used to read all the like the memorial stuff, and just put a lot of stuff into perspective for me, I think. And I think that's really what started. I always had an interest in the military, but I think that in those moments of clarity, I would sit there and look at all the sacrifice and everything that people had made for the country, and I think it definitely helped move that fire of being upset with myself to turning into a fire of wanting to achieve and wanting to give back and serve. So I just I kind of made that conscious decision. I think I want to join the service. I tell a lot of people, hey, it's you always get the half-ass answers like, well, why did you join? It's like, oh, for the money, or hey, whatever, this or that, or the basic to serve. But a lot of ways the military saved me, I would say, because it helped me channel a lot of the issues I was dealing with at the time. It helped put a lot of things into perspective. So
yeah, I think the military saves a lot of people.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of us come from imperfect pasts, and a lot of guys have different backgrounds, and getting into the military environment where you have a mission, you have something to train for, and brothers around you that are going to enable you to do it and hold you accountable. I think it has a very profound effect. So you joined the Army. What was your initial MOS?
Yeah, I joined the reserves, and kind of funny, the reason why I joined the reserves is I was very unsure of myself at the time as to what I thought I was capable of. And so, I've told the story about the run time and the first time I timed myself running, but I honestly was really unsure going into the military, like if I was even going to be able to make it, even through basic. So kind of the reserves was me playing it safe. And even at that time, Andrew, we had been talking about the PJ stuff, but it was kind of more like an unreachable goal. It was kind of like, yeah, like we should do PJs, and then you get the cold feet and you're kind of like, well, can I make it as a PJ? Can I, or eventually, hey, can I make it as a Green Beret? Like maybe I should just join the reserves, So it was kind of my putting the brakes on it and trying to be like, well, at least like you're pretty confident you can make it in the reserves, right? You just got to make it through basic training. And so that's what I did. So I joined the reserves as a 25 Bravo, and I took off for basic, and I showed up, and I was completely shocked at how overprepared I was, and that's when I think the flip of the switch happened, and I was like, I'm built for this shit. Like I love this shit. I can do it. I'm very good at it, and so I accelerated at basic training. I did really well. And I came back to my unit in the reserves at 25 Bravo, and I found out that they were deploying to Qatar, and I was like, awesome, or to Kuwait, and I was like, that's awesome, like that's exactly what I want, like I want to deploy. And then I ended up getting caught up in some best warrior stuff. They saw that I was a hard charger, and I had my first real mentor in the military. My first real mentor was my drill sergeant. He's a Marine DI, and I've told you these stories. This guy was completely insane, make you sleep with a position of attention and everything. Just really instilled the discipline, which I loved. I used to, really love that shit. And so my first real mentor was at the Army Reserves, and he was a former Marine also, and he was and I heard that all through basic. Joyner should have been a fucking Marine. God damn it, should have been a fucking Marine. I always laugh. And then I show up to my first unit, and my first mentor is a former Marine scout sniper. Literally tells me, it's like, the fuck you doing in the reserves, dude? Like, you should have been a fucking Marine. I'm like, yeah, I should have been a fucking Marine. Because I tried to join, actually, before I left New Mexico. I talked about joining the Marines. I actually met with a recruiter, and I because I was just looking for, like, I got to do something. And I did this whole packet program that was supposed to help me graduate high school, and then come to find out, it ended up being like thousands of dollars that I didn't have. And so that was in 2009, like when the surge was going on. I wanted to get in to Iraq and everything. And so anyway, so I thought about the Marines before, but anyways, yeah. So I showed up my first unit, and then I went to the best warrior, and ended up winning a bunch of them, and got a signature to go active duty for the 18 X-ray thing. So
Back up there. How far did you go in best warrior?
So I ended up going to the all Army and took second overall. Got beat by one board question. It's pretty upsetting.
What does that process look like to get there?
So you go from level to level. So it starts at the battalion, then goes to brigade, and then goes up to the regiment, and then you go the reserves, and then you go all Army. And yeah, so it's pretty basic competition. It's marksmanship. You do some form of a PT test. You do like scenario driven stuff. You do like level 10 tasks. You do a combatives tournament. You do a multitude. You do all your level 10 tasks, essentially everything that would be expected of a soldier, and you just compete. And then you do a oral board, which was obviously my weak point. So talking to a bunch of old sergeant majors. So
now,
yeah.
Obviously you got the signature from going to the all Army competition to go active duty, which I'm going to dive into that in just a second. But having the success of going through basic and kind of realizing that you are cut out for this, like this is the environment that you excel in, and you started thriving on that discipline. What was it like the first time you went back home after basic training?
Oh, dude, it's funny. It's like culture shock, man. It really is. Like you don't think like. So for me, for my initial basic training, it was, like the 10 weeks or whatever. And then my job training, I had no idea how long my job training was going to be. It ended up being like 6 months, dude. So I was so like against going off post. Like I was in it, dude. I was like, I'm going to be, like I'm Army, dude. I'm breathing, I'm living this shit. So I wouldn't go off post. Yeah, I wouldn't go off post. They'd get their passes for the weekends, and they'd be like, yeah, we're going steakhouse. We're going to go out drinking. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm going to just do push-ups in front of the barracks like some kind of crazy person. And so I would just be there all weekend just working out. And, and then I found out that, we could sneak to the post gym. So I'd go to the post gym when no one was around and take my little AIT badge off and go work out at the post gym just to get a sneaky lift in. But, yeah, dude, the mindset was just like, I'm not leaving base. Like, I'm all Army. And then so when I got done, I went back to Utah. And so I was just by myself, and because Andrew had at this point, he'd went 18 X-ray already. And so I went back, and I was staying with his mom because we didn't have the apartment anymore. And I remember like going around town and being like, these people are fucking dirty, dude. What the hell? We were like, holy cow. Like, look at that dude's face. Like, oh my God, he's got like all that like long, gross beard, and like pants are sagging halfway down his ass. And I remember just being like, golly, these people are so like, just like, out there, and it wears off pretty quickly. But I remember that being the whole thing. Like, no one has like short hair, and people have got beards, and clothes are all raggedy. So it was definitely a culture shock. And then just seeing like free will, you forget what free will is. You've been used to like so many time hacks and expectations all the time, and then you're just free. It was pretty weird.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you got the signature to go to active duty, and then did you go 18X from that point?
Yeah, it was 18 X-ray, so I had to go back through basic training in OSUT. So I started week 2 of basic training, which was sweet, and then went through OSUT and went to airborne school. Then I went to SOPSI, and then selection, and then the rest is Q course.
Okay. What is kind of the OSUT process for those that don't know?
Yeah, so OSUT, it's the Infantry essentially like how I had to do my 25 Bravo training, my job training. It's the infantry's job training, which is kind of mixed into the basic training, but it's at the tail end of the basic training. So you do your standard basic training and you stay there. You basically get like a graduation, and then you basically just turn around and like, welcome to OSUT. And then you're like, oh, but we didn't go anywhere. Like, well, you're in it. And then you do your 4 weeks of infantry training, which is just, I don't really remember it, man. I'll be honest. I don't. It was some shooting, and then they do like a culmination exercise where you ruck real far, carry some machine guns, and they do like the grog and all that stuff. And it's like a whole initiation process. You get your blue cord, and yeah.
And then you're in the infantry.
And then you're in the infantry, dude. Yeah.
So you went out to airborne real quick. I was talking about it today with somebody, but what was your first jump like?
My first jump?
Yeah, at airborne school.
It was a night jump, dude. Like a lot of people say, my eyes were closed now. That's like the one I always hear. Like, it was a night jump because I didn't open my eyes. Yeah, a lot of nerves for sure. Like, don't know what to expect. You're just like, all you've been doing is learning how to fall down. So everything else is, you just pray. You're like, I hope I don't die. Here we go. It was super smooth. I came down and just didn't know what the hell I was doing. They're just yelling at you, like, oh, feet and knees, put them together, airborne, and then you just land like shit, and then it's over. And then you're like, I guess I got to do it again. So, what about you? What was your first jump like?
No, I feel like that's a perfect depiction of every jump you ever go on. My first jump
changes.
Yeah, it's you just hope and pray for the best, keep your feet and knees together, and then you land like shit, get the wind knocked out of you, and you're like, oh, I survived. Yeah. My first jump, I get super motion sickness, which you know this, but
yeah, I know this.
I know we can dive into that later.
Yeah,
but my first jump, I actually threw up. So I was getting super sick. We were like race tracking in the back of the aircraft, started getting all hot, and you smell the jet fuel and everything. And then I jump out, the parachute kind of expands and you feel the pressure of it. And then like as soon as I kind of came to, I was like, whoa, just threw up in there. I was like, what's up?
What's up? All over the reserve too. I'm like, airborne, what did you do to your reserve?
Right. Cool. What was it like when you showed up to Fort Bragg and now you were officially in the Special Forces pipeline?
Well, obviously I was a force to be reckoned with when I showed up. There was a lot of whispers about me coming. People heard about me during selection. They knew about the run times. They knew about the ruck times. They knew about the performance, dude. And it was very well known that CJ was showing up to the Q course, and they didn't really know, how to make it challenging for me. But they managed to do it. No, I showed up and I was get on the bus, and back from selection, and it's just kind of like the excitement of selection just quickly fades, and you realize, well, now I got to go through like 2 years of this.
No, training. I mean, what was it like? You show up from airborne school and you're like getting ready for selection.
Oh, like getting ready for selection?
Yeah.
I was super pumped. I don't know. It was exciting for sure, just to know that I was like right there, ready to go. But in a lot of ways, there were some nerves involved. But I think SOPSI did such a great job of just like taking all of the mystique away from selection. They basically like you're literally there where it happens, so you're already familiar with where selection takes place. You're already going through, all the same like timelines as selection. You're working out twice a day, you're eating, sleeping. And so, yeah, they took a lot of the nerves out. So when I showed up to selection, I was like, oh, this is just SOPSI, but there's just more people here now. That's exactly what it felt like. So it was a little bit of nerves at first, but SOPSI kind of just squashed all that.
Did you struggle with anything at selection?
Yeah, dude, I got road killed.
No.
During the star course. Yeah, I'm not even shitting you.
Really?
So that's something I'll tell guys. Like, if you're not confident in your land nav abilities, or if there's any skill that you're not confident in, do not be afraid to ask for help, because land nav was that for me, right? So I went through the whole, and I didn't really quite understand like how like important land nav was. I knew about the star course, you know, but I didn't really didn't really click, you know. I was a kid, so I'm like, you know, I'll get it, you know, I'll get it. And so during SOPSI, I went through land nav, but I was still just kind of like unsure about it, right? Like I didn't trust my compass, like I didn't really understand like attack points. I kind of like was like fumbling my way through it, right? And so all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was on the star course and it was nighttime, and I'm with like, you know, however many people there at the start point, and I'm like thinking to myself like, do I even know what the fuck I'm doing right now? Like, am I really going to be able to make these points? Because, you know, you're waiting for your card with all your points on it, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I can do this. And so I get my points and I plot my first point, and it's like 9K away, and I'm like, dude, like, I'm fucked. I'm like, there's no way. Like, I've been doing like 2-3K, you know, and I've been like fumbling my way to them. And I'm like, dude, I don't know. So I was like, you know what? And I was talking with a guy. He ended up being a nonce. Like, he was a really cool dude. Came from Green, from CAG, and then like I don't know. He had some issues, and then he had to leave, and then so he was going through the pipeline. And anyways, he was talking to me. They called him Delta Dan the whole time he was there, and he's like, hey man, just use the roads. He's like, nothing saying you can't like handrail roads, right? And I'm like, yeah, because I was, you know, just get nerves, and you start talking to the guy next to you. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey man, don't worry, like just use the road, just handrail the roads, just make sure you stay 50 meters off, you'll be fine. So I'm like, all right, dude, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna use the road. So basically, don't be confident in my capabilities. I'm just gonna try to get as close to cheating as possible, and I'll get through it that way. And I shit you not, the very first movement to my first point, not even a kilometer in, I'm handrailing this road, and I lost track of the road a little bit, and all of a sudden I hear, psst, psst, candidate. And I look, and he's like, what's that right next to you? And I look, and I'm like, oh, I knew what it fucking was. I was like, what is it, Sergeant? what is it? You know, like, I don't know. And he's like, that's a fucking road candidate. He's like, you're fucking road killed. And he had a ghillie suit on. He just waiting in the trees for guys. I was like, fuck, dude. I was like, everything just flashed before my eyes, dude. And I was like, I'm done, dude. Like, I went through all this just to get road killed on my first point because I didn't want to take the time to admit to myself or to other people that I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing. So I was like, fuck, dude, I just ruined it. I just ruined everything. All of that. I got people, family waiting at home to hear back from me to see if I make it, and I just ruined it. And something just like that, it was like a relief feeling, but just like a, you know, where everything's just falling down around you. And so I handed him my scorecard, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think to this day that he actually annotated anything on my scorecard, right? I didn't ever look at it because I didn't give a fuck at that point. I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm fucking done. And you know what I said to myself? I was like, I'm going to find every fucking one of these points just to say I did it. Even though I'm not going to get selected, I'm going to find every single one of these points. And I took my compass out and I said, you know what? Like, I'm just going to go generally east until I hit this road. And I took my compass out, and that was the first time I trusted my compass. And I fucking went, dude. And I found every fucking point, dude. I was running to every fucking point, finding, like, land nabbing like I never before because I just had this, like, unhinged confidence because I had nothing to lose. And so I went 8 for 8, and then I got selected. So either he didn't annotate it, or they're like, all right, this dude put out on, even though he got road killed on his first point, but dude put out, and so we'll give it to him. But yeah, dude, and ever since then, I never forgot how to land nav. It was just like this confidence that came over me, and I just trusted my compass, and I went, and I just did it. So
damn, dude, yeah, that's a good story. I hadn't heard that one before.
Yeah, it was a super shitty feeling, dude, in the moment.
Wow, I can't even imagine. That's like a big fear. But no, that's freaking awesome. And I feel like land nav too is a lot of being confident in yourself. Like, that's why I always tell guys is when you go to selection, like when you go to SOPSI, all that stuff, like they're going to teach you everything you need to know. Ask questions, obviously. But really, like, the big thing that you gain from, or like the big thing that people who are good at land nav have is just that confidence in the woods, right? Confidence in trusting your equipment and things like that. So no, that's a really freaking cool story. So what was it like getting that decision from the cadre at the end, and then getting back, being able to tell your family about it?
Yeah, it was a great feeling. I came back, and it was weird because there was, like, you know, sometimes I feel like you can kind of like predict things, right? Like you have like a gut feeling about things, and that gut feeling I had during selection was that I was going to have a kid, and so I had just seen Crystal before that, like the month before, we had airborne and everything, and so I just kind of had this feeling that like she was pregnant, and so I was just kind of riding that feeling. So a lot of that kind of fueled me during selection, was knowing that, hey, I think I might have a kid on the way. And sure enough, I got on the phone. You know, they give you your phone back, and I called Crystal, and she was like, hey, I'm moving to North Carolina. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I already have a apartment. She's like, my mom already bought furniture. I'll be there in like 4 days. And she's like, and I'm pregnant. And I was like, I fucking knew it. And so I mean, she knew. She's like, I knew you were gonna get selected. I never doubted it. She's like, but I am fucking pregnant, so be ready. Be ready. So yeah. So she was out there 4 days later. Called my mom's, you know, let her know I got selected. My mom's a hard ass. So, you know, a lot of the thanks I gave to her, you know, just for making me a resilient person and beating the shit out of me all those years. So ended up paying off.
That's
yeah.
awesome. And then how much time did you have before you started the Q course?
I was in the very next class. So there was like some DOD freeze at the time. So I was literally almost no hold. I got to meet like the hold zombies, you know, the guys that have been there for like 4 months waiting for the Q course. And they're just like beaten down. Like, oh, you know, they got like the war stories about hold. They're like, hey, man, this is like Sergeant Castaneda. Like, hey, don't make eye contact with him. He'll smoke you until you die, you know? Like, oh, fuck. So I didn't have to deal with any of that because there was a lot of people with a lot of training scars when I showed up, and I got to go straight into the pipeline right away, which was awesome. So,
what did the pipeline look like for you when you went through? I know they change it all the time. They've probably changed it since I went through, but what was the first thing you started with?
Yeah, I was literally just trying to think of like what was the first phase for me. What was the first phase for you?
It was IUW, Introduction to Unconventional Warfare.
Yeah, I want to say it was the same for me. IUW. So you basically just do land nav again, and then I want to say it was SUT after that, and then it was MOS, and then it was Sage, and then it was language. I think that's
SEER
how
at the end, or
and SEER at the end. Oh no, SEER in between SUT and MOS.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's exactly how it was for me.
Yeah, and then there was the academy. The very beginning, I was supposed to go to the NCO academy. I want to say, but I had already been through. WLC because I was already getting promoted to E5 when I transitioned out of the reserves.
Okay.
And so I had already completed WLC, so I didn't have to do that portion. So I skipped ahead a little bit.
Gotcha. How was SUT for you?
You know, it was a little confusing at the time, you know, because you're like a young guy. I think a lot of the emphasis goes on the captains in that course. I definitely feel like the tactical side is like very heavy on the captain. So, I mean, I think I was Bravo team leader for all my evaluations and Alpha team leader. So I never got a squad leader look. But man, I think I did pretty good in SUT. The rucks were heavy. But I remember being very thorough in all the positions that I was in. I remember always just wanting to carry more weight, and we used to get in trouble for carrying too much shit. Like, hey, you idiots. I think one time, you know, because some people are better than others, obviously, and I remember being in SUT and guys like complaining about like what they were going to carry out. Because, you know, you had to ruck out to like, hey, we're going to do like ambush recox, right? And it's like, well, all we have to do is just carry the stuff out there. And then you set all your shit down literally, and you just like do the ambush over and over and over again, right? All day until you're sick of it. But I remember guys like, oh man, I was the 240 last time. So I took, without anyone knowing, I took the 240 and I took the tripod and I took all of the MG, the AG stuff. Yeah. And I was the AG and the tripod and the 240, and no one even noticed. And I carried all that shit out there, and so everyone was all mad. Like, well, fuck you do that? Like, I was like, hey man, So yeah, I was a hard charger back then.
Dude,
I
it
just
sounds
wanted
like
to carry.
you still are. It sounds like a very CJ thing to do.
I just wanted to carry heavy shit, dude. I loved it.
That's
And yeah.
hilarious, dude. Obviously, we can't talk about Sear too much, man. But do you have any good stories from Sear?
Yeah, dude. I was a fucking knucklehead. I was the one getting the ID card pulled all the
Oh,
time.
really?
Yeah, so I would, I'd get roughed up, and then they'd be like, like this is the part where you talk, and I'm like, nope. I'm like, no, this is the part where you talk, and I'm like, no, like, kill me. And they'd be like, God damn it! All right, stop. Like, you talk. Like, this is how this is a training course. Like, this is not, real life. Like, you talk now, and I'm like, okay, this, and they're like, okay, and then again, all right, we'll just see you talk, and I'm like, I'm not talking. Like, God damn it, dude, we just told you you're
Stubborn
talking.
ass.
Yeah, just being stubborn. They had me like doing all kinds of crazy shit, and they're like, why won't you just like, we're getting so close to just like pulling you. I'm like, all right, fine. So I remember being like thinking they do a good job, man. I'll give it to them. Like they have a good job. I remember thinking like, this is the day. Like, today's the day. It's gonna be over. And then day turned into night. You're like, fuck, dude, where are they? They said they were going to save us. There's nobody coming to save us, dude. We might live here forever. This is
Yeah.
they do a pretty good job of really convincing you. Like, you lose track of time. You just kind of like, fuck, dude, this might be real. I'm starting to think I got mixed up at some kind of.
I'm stuck here.
I'm not real.
Stuck
I mean, yeah, it definitely starts taking a wear on your psyche a little bit. So they do a
Yeah,
good job.
there's one that I always tell dudes. It's like, you don't sleep for days at a time. So you don't eat,
Yeah.
you don't sleep. So you're just like dog ass tired. And it's like one of the portions where they bring you inside. So I like went inside and I just racked out. I just fell asleep. And I had no idea how long I slept for. I just knew I slept and I
Yeah.
slept really well. And then I walked back outside and it's still nighttime. Like I went in at night and it's still night. And I had no
Yeah.
idea if it was like the next night or if it was still the same night. I was like, I literally have no clue what day it is right now. I felt
dude.
like I slept for 15 hours, but it's probably only 20 minutes. But that's cool. And then we talked about it a little bit last time, but what was more difficult, the ruck out at max gain or the infill for Robin Sage?
As a whole, max gain for sure. That was one of the courses. I don't know if you ever been in a state of mind where you're like, I wish my fucking leg would just break. Then at least I'd have an excuse, like, I'm not going to quit, but if my leg breaks, like, hey, now I can just go home and I'll be a winner still. So that max gain in its entirety, there was a lot of points where it was like, all right, dude, I just want my leg to break. There was one point where I literally stepped into a hip high hole, like straight down, hip all the way down, and I'm like, my leg didn't fucking break. Are you kidding me? Like, that was the chance. If there was any time that I was gonna break my leg, dude, that was it. And nothing, dude. I was like, all right, dude, I'm never gonna be able to quit. I'm like, I'm gonna have to do this shit forever. And so as a whole, max gain was definitely harder, but Robin Sage infill was something. It was a SATCOM package, so 130 pound ruck, and it was the same situation where nobody wanted to carry the 240. And I was like, I don't give a fuck, dude. I'll carry the 240. Give me the 240, dude. So I carried the 240 on the infill, and the plan was we're gonna hand the 240 off during infill. Well, guess what? Never got handed off the 240 because I was too fucking stubborn. But it was about we got trucked in, dropped off in just like this down timbered field, and they were like, go that way. And so we're moving through a down timbered field for like 3.5 hours, like just trying to get through it. We moved from like as the sun was going down until the next day, essentially. I don't remember the exact time. It was a long fucking time. But they knew the landowner of the area that we were moving through. And so he had access to some kind of water release that he could flood the area. And so they flooded the area. So it didn't look anything like the topographical maps. It was completely flooded when we got there. So the whole time, all we were doing was, and it was the middle of winter, so it was like snowing that night, like sleeting. And so all we were doing was we were just like had our point man, and he would just probe the woods, and he'd be like, it's flooded. And he would just come back out, and then we'd just be standing there. and a security halt. And then we'd be like, all right, keep moving. And then we'd go up a little bit, and they'd be like, all right, try to cross, see if we can cross here, and go, it's flooded. And we just did that all night, dude. And the cadre just watched us just go in and out of this tree line, just looking for, trying to find a crossing point, because we had to get over this obstacle. And there was no crossing point. They knew it. They were just trying to exhaust us to see what our decision making would do. And we ended up having to like go to our like contingency plan, where we had to stay like throughout the day and like bed down and like do a bunch of, you know, like trade craft shit, whatever. And then finally we were able to make link up, and yeah, it was horrible, dude. So
wow, that is.
Yeah, and then they put us in trucks. Yeah, then they put us in trucks with just tarps in the middle of winter with the wind just blowing. You're soaking wet, you know, because your clothes are soaked. And so I never got warm for like the rest of Robinson Sage, I felt like, until we got to the G base and got in front of a fire. So yeah, it was pretty rough, but fun times, dude. Good character building. That's for sure.
It's always one of those things. Like when I look back on it, just thinking back at my Q course experience as a whole, I was like, oh, it wasn't too bad. And then we like dive into the little stories like this, and I like think about mine. I was like, there's some fucking rough times.
Yeah, they call it the rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. So you finished the Q course. What was, you know, obviously like with your past, with everything that you had gone through up to that point, what kind of pride did you feel when you finally finished and got to don the beret?
Yeah, man, my whole family came out. I was really shocked. Like all my family from California, my aunts, uncles, all of Crystal's family came out and watched. It was definitely a proud moment. Definitely felt like I had really accomplished something after all that time. I had to recycle MOS just because I had my daughter, and so I was a little delayed on graduating, but I was able to go straight through, and so it definitely was like a feeling of accomplishment. I would say it's still up there. It's probably one of the biggest accomplishments or feelings of accomplishment for sure.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
No, I agree. That's really cool. What was it like? So you get orders to go out to 10th group out in Colorado. What was it like, you know, day one showing up to your team?
Yeah, dude, don't forget language, dude. I got to learn French, dude. I had a D-Lab of 66, dude. Nothing to brag about, but you know I will. So yeah, I went to language, showed up to 10th group and my first team. So they do like a green platoon there at 10th group. So you get to kind of get trained up on like all the equipment that you're going to get issued, or that you do get issued there at green platoon. They do like a driving course, like combatives. They do the SOC-P there to go over a little bit of CQB, so you don't show up to your team completely clueless. So I showed up. I remember it was Sergeant Major Dorsch that was actually the NCOIC. He ended up becoming the Group Sergeant Major later on.
Yeah. Wow.
Super solid dude. And I remember him just giving insight. You know, they even gave us a class on like how to dress at the embassy, like how to buy suits, where to buy suits, like how your suits should look, how they should fit, all that stuff. And I remember him telling me, "Hey, man, like when you get to a team," because he took us to a team room. It was actually on the wives' night. That's when they bring all the wives in, and he takes you to it through the team rooms in the company. I actually went to Alpha Company, which ended up being the company I went to, and I didn't know it at the time. And he told us, look at each one of these team rooms, and the first thing that you should always notice is like what does a team room look like? Is it clean? Is it dirty? Does it stink? Does it seem well organized? Like what's hanging on the walls? He's like, take note of all these things, right? He's like, so that way when you become a team sergeant, what impression do you want to set on a new guy? So some of them like pristine, right? Clean to the nines. But I remember this one team room, it looked like a snowstorm had came in, and it had came in for the last like year, and everyone was like marching through mud, and they walked in the team room every day and never cleaned their shoes off. It was like caked up mud everywhere, and it's like a brand new building, and just shit everywhere. Cages were trashed, and so I remember him being like, "This is an example of like what a poorly like kept team room looks like. This is what you don't want. And I remember like, yeah, man, this is gross. And that ended up being my team that I got that I got assigned to. And but to rewind actually on that night, I thought it was so we had I was Sergeant Major Palka at the time. So he this is real shit. He sat us all down in a room and introduced himself. Hey, I'm the group sergeant major, blah blah blah. And he asked us all to step outside, and that was when we were doing the tour. So we went outside with Master Sergeant Dorsch at the time, and we were doing our tour of the team rooms. And I come back, and like my wife's like crying. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like, what did he say to you? And she's like, he told us that we should look around the room, and that in the next 3 to 4 years, at least like 25% of your husbands are not going to be around anymore. And he was right, man. Like that was actually the reality of it. After about 3-4 years of being in group, there was about a quarter of us that had been killed in Afghanistan. So he was 100% accurate with the statement. But yeah, man, it was that was definitely a sobering moment. You kind of don't believe it at the time. You're kind of like, yeah, whatever, like a statistic, who cares? And then, yeah, it slowly became a reality. It ended up being more than that. It ended up being more than 25% of us that ended up being killed. But yeah, so I showed up to my first team, and I bought a vacuum. Yeah, that was my first. Instead of a case of beer, I brought a vacuum, and I started cleaning the fucking team room. So. Yeah.
That's hilarious. How long did you have before your first deployment with group?
It was 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. So I showed up. I started in process in battalion, and my senior, the first time and last time I had a senior, he showed up in battalion. He's like, hey, and it was actually the Delta that I showed up with, Dan. He's like, hey, are you Dan and CJ? And we're like, yeah. He's like, hey, we don't got time for all this in process and shit. Like, we're leaving in 2 weeks. Like, you need to come to the team room now. I was like, all right. And so we fucking went to the team room, got introduced. There was no time for new guy bullshit. It was basically like, hey, man, you're on the team. Like, let's fucking go. Like, we're deploying. And so we went to Tajikistan, and we were doing some CNT type shit. And so some counter narcotics trafficking stuff. And so we did that for 6 months, and it was a really good experience. And so I got to get integrated in the team in a really real way right away. So it was really good time.
What was your impression of Tajikistan? It's a country most people don't even know exists.
Yeah, dude, that place is crazy, man. Like, if it wasn't like for the Middle East being just a huge dumpster fire, like, that place is beautiful, man. You're talking about like the Himalayas, just hanging out right there, and these giant fucking sheep, dude, that people paid tens of thousands of dollars to shoot. Dude, some of the most beautiful rivers and mountains. Like, we would go out there and just like go explore. Just the craziest terrain you'll ever see, and just it's kind of crazy, man. It put a lot of things in perspective. That was the first time I'd been out of the country, but so it was a satellite state for the Soviet Union, right? So all of their infrastructure, right? You'd see glimpses of China starting to emerge, and I'm sure they're there a lot more now. And actually, when we landed on the runway, we landed at the same time as our Russian counterpart. Like, they landed with their C-27 equivalent at the exact same time. Like, we're offloading the bird, and you can see across the runway C-27 equivalent as their Russian ODA is getting off of the plane, as we're also deplaning. And anyway, so the point of the story is, it was crazy because when the Soviet Union fell, that they were basically left with all this like partial infrastructure. They were developing the area very heavily, but then all the money stopped flowing in. So basically the infrastructure stopped growing, and it stopped being built. But the way that they take care of their stuff was insane. Like, the way that they treated their stuff was like, they knew they weren't getting any more of it, So like, every night they had like crews of people. It was women that would go out with these like stick brooms, and they would clean the streets. They'd like wipe, like wiped down the buildings. Like they like did everything to like make sure that the shit they had was taken care of. And I was like, damn, dude, that's crazy. Like second world country, but man, they sure did take care of their shit and super clean. I was shocked.
Did you guys ever have a run-in with the Russian ODA?
No, nothing like that.
Not
there
a
was
run-in,
some
but did you ever see them or work around them?
No, we never ran into them. I mean, we kind of had our own thing going on, just working at the embassy and stuff, and we had a pretty cool partner for us. It was a fun time, man. We got to do some cool stuff. We actually had a shoot house right there. That's how I got spun up on CQB right away as a new guy, which you don't normally get to do, like, you know, right off the bat. But my team sergeant was an old Sephardic guy, so he went to the, you know, shoot house school, and so we would do CQB every single day. We'd close out the range and we'd go straight to the shoot house, and we just drill in the house every day. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah,
that's awesome. And then you got back from your first deployment, and if I'm not mistaken, you went to Ranger School then, right?
Yeah, I had a desire to go to Ranger School, a burning desire to go to Ranger School. It was something that I convinced myself a long time ago that I had to do it, and so I got back, and I just felt like it would be good for me to develop myself, just as a young guy, to just get into a leadership school like Ranger School, and so yeah, I came back, and I think a couple months later I was in Ranger School as an E6. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I want to note for all the listeners, because I know you're never going to say it, but he was the honor grad of his Ranger School class.
Yeah, dude. There it is somewhere. Feet. This guy right here, dude, hanging up the wall decoration. That's all that hard work, dude. If you want it, dude, then you can hang it up later.
Yep, that's it right there. What differentiates, like, how does somebody win honor grad in Ranger School?
Yeah, so don't fail patrols. Number one, you can't have any patrol failures. Can't have any negative spot reports. And then, I mean, it really comes down to being able to have influence on people. Like, that's what I learned really quickly was, you know, I did a lot of bad shit when I was younger, but one thing that I always did well was talking to people. And so getting to know people, you know, I have a genuine interest in getting to know people. And that goes a long way, especially when it comes to leadership, and especially when it comes to hard times. And I do a lot of, you know, a lot of interjection of humor, you know, in tough times and whatnot. But I was able to influence people in high stress and shitty situations. You know, that's what the name of the game is yes, you got to be tactically sound. Yes, you got to be able to place an ambush, but that's the easy part. Like, that's just by the numbers. Like, they're going to tell you how to do that, but they can't teach you how to influence people. They can't teach you how to get somebody to not fall asleep because they don't want to let you down. Like, they can't teach you how to make people push through, you know, an assault line with aggression when they're hungry and tired. They can't teach you those things. Those things are kind of intangible that, in a lot of ways, I think sometimes people are born with it. And then I also think it's something that you can develop over time, right? But you have to hone it. It's not something that you're just going to wake up and, you know, when I say you're naturally born with, I think it's you're naturally born to kind of sharpen that skill, not necessarily that you're just born as just a natural leader. I think you have more of a tendency to move towards task and doing things in your life that make you a better leader. And so I think as it pertains to leadership, I think as it pertains to, you know, graduating top in my Ranger class, I would say it has to do with just being able to influence people. Like, you have to get people to believe in what you want them to do. And I think that was a lot of it, was like, we had such a tight-knit squad, and it was because we were having fun doing it and setting an environment that made people want to perform. And then I think the same thing with the platoon. Like, the platoon, I remember talking to the cadre, because I was an E6 at the time, SF guy, you know, so there was that little bit of back and forth with the cadre where, like, cadre, like, hey, man, you know, like, what's selection like? And I'm like, oh, like, you know, I'll be like laying on the line, like, oh, it's pretty hard, you know. So there's a little bit of that, like, that broing out with them. So I got a little bit of that, but I think the the big thing was, you know, there was cadre that wanted, like, were asking to walk our platoon because of how high we were performing. Just because they were like, yeah, these dudes are like literally like, you know, we plan for, oh, we're gonna move, you know, a K every hour, and we're moving like 2.5K in an hour, and these dudes are like, our eyes are getting like full nights of sleep, and they're like, fuck yes, like I want to walk that platoon. Like those dudes are motivated as shit. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really, if like you want to really be a high performer, I think I need you to sit down and really mentally check yourself. You have to sit down and read. You know, I think there's a fine line a lot of times, and I had an old English teacher tell me this a long time ago, and she really was somebody that I kind of looked up to as a you know, like a teenager. She was the only teacher in my school that had her doctorate. She's, you know, English. Now I know she's a Democrat, but you know, it doesn't change how I feel about her. But she used to tell me, CJ, you know, never stop reading fiction. She's like, don't be one of those people that all they do is read nonfiction. Don't sit there and read, you know, self-help books all day long, you know, looking for quick fixes or gimmicks. She's like, the only way you're going to get introspective is by reading fiction, you know, reading philosophy, reading things that, you know, really make you think about yourself and who you really are, like poetry, right? I mean, as weird as that sounds, but like being able to actually have introspection and look inside of yourself and really think about who you are. I think that type of reading definitely provides that, or at least provides an outlet for that. So I spent a lot of time reading fiction too, as well as, you know, reading, you know, On Killing by Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, or, you know, Ghost Soldiers by, you know, Dan Brown, or who wrote Ghost Soldiers? Don't tell me. Who was it? Anyways, Dan Couch. Dan Brown wrote something else. He's the Da Vinci Code. But anyways, you know what I'm saying? Like reading a lot of those nonfiction books to kind of understand the culture and understand, like, you know, the mindset. But how I really developed my leadership was through introspection and understanding who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and being able to actually look at people and say, I know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and being able to balance those with what you have to offer. And that's how you really make a successful team, is like, hey, I'm weak there, so I see this guy's really strong in this specific area. Maybe it's like, hey, being a hard ass and doing PCCs and PCIs on the troops on the line. I don't like being that hard ass, but hey, this guy's got that in him, and people receive it well from him, so I'm going to use that guy, and I'm gonna enable him, and then also praise him, because like, hey man, like if it wasn't for you, like I couldn't get you to go PCC and PCI the line or troop the line, because guys listen to you, and you know, and then he feels like, hey man, like yeah, that's my strength, and I'm you know, and he's like, I've got something to bring to the table for the team, and I think that really develops a team well, is when guys feel like they're contributing. You know, it's when guys don't feel like they're being used appropriately, is when you start to build distrust and disow, and people start turning on each other. So,
man,
yeah.
There's so many great points from there. We could do a whole other podcast just on that freaking clip from there. So that's awesome, man. Now, you get back from Ranger School. What was the next kind of big turning point in your career?
Yeah, so I came back from Ranger School. Well, my sergeant major showed up, Bill Haynes, my Ranger buddy. He showed up at graduation, gave me the big congratulations, told me, hey, Sergeant Joyner, hey, whatever school you want, you got it, brother. Like, it's all yours. You know, he was super proud. And so I was like, yeah, dude, I'm gonna get back. I'm gonna go to Sniper. I'm gonna go to Sephardic, or I'm gonna go to Halo. Well, you know, whatever cool school I could think of. And I got back, and my team sergeant's like, you're going to Jump Master. And I was like, what? I was like, Jump Master? That's my reward? He's like, yeah, consider it a gift from me for setting you up for success from the future. I mean, he was right. Like, if I would have stayed in, and I would have stayed at group, you have to have, you know, Jump Master to make E8. Why do it later in your career when you got a bunch of shit going on? So anyways, went to Jump Master, was not honor grad of Jump Master. So that was a pretty humbling experience. Jumpmaster was pretty tough. I think I got out my second or third go for the final test, and then I found out I was going to Afghanistan, and then I got sent to sniper school. So that was super cool. My Bravo didn't want to go. He didn't want to be away from the family. So that was when I was still hard charging. So I was like, dude, I'll go. Like the 9 weeks before I leave for a deployment, I'll leave my family behind.
Yeah.
And so I went to sniper school, loved it, and then I went out to Afghanistan and did a 6-month rotation there, and got in Afghanistan, had a really good trip. It was pretty kinetic. Started off kind of slow, a lot of dry holds, and then eventually turned into a shit show of just one hit after another and getting ambushed and other stuff. And it was fun, man. Learned a ton. That's when I finally, I think the tactics really started sinking in. That's when I really started to understand small unit tactics. And I was like, this shit makes sense. It started clicking, like fire superiority, movement and maneuver, communication, like it all, like until you're in that, not until, I'm sure, but it really makes sense. Like, when you're getting shot at and you're actually having to move and maneuver, it all starts clicking. So yeah, I went to Afghanistan, and then that was
What part of the country were you in for that trip?
I was in P2K, so it was like Gardez area near the Paki border. Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And
Pretty.
go ahead.
No, it was a pretty cool little area.
Gotcha. And you said first part of the trip was a lot of dry holes. Second part of the trip, it really started picking up, and that's when you guys were hitting target after target.
Oh yeah, we got super busy. We ended up reaching out to some areas that the U.S. hadn't been in like 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
That were like right on the border, and so we kind of what we called it was like disturbing a hornet's nest, essentially. And we went in there to places that we implanted some assets there that made us able to maneuver in that area that they didn't know we had the capability to do. And then next thing you know, we're in freaking all night firefights and just getting after it. So it was a really good time.
Do you remember your first firefight?
Yeah, it was actually it was a daytime firefight. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't as cool as I thought it was going to be. But essentially, we had set up I actually got to plan it. It was pretty fun. It was my first like actual operation I got to plan, and I had planned like a near ambush for the Taliban at a gas station, and so it was supposed to all be kicked off with my sniper shot, and so like we waited all day, and the Taliban knew we were there, so they never showed up. But they finally, so once we were like, you know what, we'll just go, like, so we're not getting anything. They know, it seems like they know we're here. We pushed up into the gas station, and then they started firing on us. And so I was basically just small arms fire, and then taking some guys and maneuvering to try to get in place to try to get a drop on them, just basically flanking them. It was me and 4 other guys. And so I was maneuvering us, and then realized that we were allowing our base of fire being the partner force, and then we quickly made the decision that it wasn't a good idea to maneuver anymore.
Yeah.
So we quickly realized that it wasn't worth it, and so we ended up just using munitions from the airplane. Pretty fun though. I mean, it was awesome feeling. Lots of adrenaline. Felt good. So.
Gotcha. And then was that the trip that you were with Chuck?
Yeah, that was the trip with Chuck. That was towards the end of the deployment. That we were actually escorting a convoy. Of course, because that's what a 12-man ODA is best used for, escorting convoys.
Yeah, right.
Like large company-sized convoys. And so yeah, we were escorting a convoy through Gardez on one of the most dangerous roads in Afghanistan. And we got caught in an ambush pretty bad, and Chuck got shot up pretty bad. I took some shrapnel. My Delta ended up getting shot up in the plates, and just an all around big mess. Cloud cover came in. We had no medevac. It was a whole situation. ended up having to casevac him. He had lost a lot of blood, and then ended up being 160th because the SOTF wouldn't release any birds to us because the pass was red. Ended up being some 160th pilots that basically went against the commander's orders and flew through the storm in the pass to come grab Chuck, and that ultimately is what saved his life because we casevaced him back to base, but they didn't have the stuff they needed to save him there, so he was dying, like flatlining, and they were able to get the surgeon on board the 160th flight, and they were able to save his life on the bird on transit back. And so, not sure whatever happened to those pilots, but yeah, they definitely saved his life. And I was out at the ranch. I was telling you the E3 ranch with those guys at Adam LaRoche's ranch, and there was two 160th pilots there. And I was talking to them, and Chuck's really vocal about the whole story, and they were like, really, like what were like, do you remember the pilots' names? And so we've been trying to find out who these guys were. So I haven't heard anything back from them, but they were going to go through the flight logs. So they keep all their flight logs to try to find out who those dudes were, and we were going to try to bring them out to the ranch and like have them meet Chuck and just give them like thanks and like some plaques and stuff.
Yeah, dude, that's so freaking cool. I had never heard that part of the story.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. 160th is the absolute shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Now, how did that deployment kind of like shape you as a person? 'Cause I feel like that's a pretty big, heavy trip to go on, especially how young you were at the time. What was your mindset coming back?
Yeah, man, it was weird, man. You come back from such an intense environment, and it's, you kind of go through this like whirlwind of emotion of like kind of like the culture shock. Like when I came back from basic training, right? Like you see everybody's faces being dirty and their clothes being dirty. It was kind of the same thing when I came back home. It was almost a feeling of detachment in a lot of ways. And it was almost like part of me still wanted to be there. It was kind of a weird feeling. Like I still wanted to be in combat, and but the other part of me was like, I knew I wanted to be home, and I wanted to be with my family. So it was kind of this weird transition where, I just felt out of place. But in the long run, what I realized was through all the bullshit that we went through over there and all the bullshit that we did and all the stuff that happened, it really made me appreciate the small things in life. I think, when I left, for Afghanistan, I had like a little bit of like road rage, I'd get upset that people were cutting me off for whatever. And I would drive and yell at nothing, and look like an idiot in my car. And then I came back and I remember like that shit didn't bother me anymore. It was weird. It was like this like relief, it was like almost like it could be worse, but it was more than that. It was like it put things into perspective to the point that like that shit didn't matter anymore. Like there's way worse shit out there than someone cutting you off in traffic, or there's way worse things than things not working out for you during the day. Like when you see shit that most people haven't seen, it definitely puts the small things into perspective and makes you appreciate them. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that changed for me, was just the perspective on life.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I agree. And after that trip, is that when you changed teams?
Yeah, so I came back. My team sergeant and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. We got in a lot of altercations, which is normal, like shit happens, like brothers fight. And so we didn't see eye to eye anymore. I wanted to go to CAG selection at the time, right before that trip, actually. I wanted to go before the trip. and he lost his ever loving mind. He was so upset that he got upset. He kind of felt, and I understand it, he kind of felt like he had set me up, got me Ranger school. I went to Jump Master. He got me sniper school. He was kind of developing me like a a mentor, and then I kind of was just like, well, I want to go to CAG because I'm still young, I'm still healthy, I'm in the best shape of my life. Like, I just want to go try it. And he kind of saw that as like me turning my back on the team. And so from that point forward, I was kind of like the redheaded stepchild, So I lost a lot of trust in his eyes, and it ended up being my captain who reached out to me, because at that point I was like, I'm like, you can't stop me. Like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna put the packet in. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna come back. I'm still gonna deploy. Like, you can't stop me. Like, I just want to do it. And it ended up being my captain who got on the phone with me, with like a really like regimented list of like, CJ, like, Matt, is really great guy. I still talk to him to this day. Like, CJ, these are the reasons why I don't think you should go to CAG selection. And I was like, all right, you got some good points there, sir. Like, all right, like, I won't go to selection. I'll be there on day one, and I'll be there for the team, because the whole argument was that I wouldn't be mentally, if I didn't get picked up, how would I be mentally, for the trip? And those are kind of the arguments that they were making. So I was like, fine, I won't go. I'll do it when I come back. And so then I came back from Afghanistan, and he was basically like, he convinced me to switch my language to Russian, because they had the rumor going around that if you didn't switch your language, you end up in third group. So I was like, I'll do that. And so then I reported language, and then I got word that I wasn't on the team anymore. So I was like, okay,
Wow.
that was just a kind of a ruse. And then I ended up on 1-1. And so I was supposed to go to the B team, and then 1-1 needed a echo. So I went straight to 1-1 because the Clarks were out. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then the 2019 deployment was the next one that you went on, or did you go on with another one with 1-1?
No, so I was with 1-1 just on the 2019 trip. And so that trip I got to go beforehand. I went to SOTAC, so I was the JTAC for that trip, which actually ended up working out really well, because the circumstances that our main guy ended up having to go home early, and then we ended up getting a backfill, and so I ended up getting to do a lot of controlling, which isn't super common in our world, which was awesome. So yeah, I deployed.
Can you describe what that means a little bit?
Yeah. So I went to SOTAC, which is in beautiful Destin, Florida, at Hurlburt Field. So I don't know if you've been to Destin, but blue, beautiful water. I went there like right around like spring break time frame, I want to say. So it was just like crazy, awesome time. Got to meet a lot of cool people. And so SOTAC is the train up for you to do your evaluation to become an aircraft controller, like a combat aircraft controller. So essentially talk to aircrafts, control them, and give them clearance to drop munitions on people. So it's just a fancy way of saying I get to drop bombs in combat legally through the DoD. So yeah, so I got to do that beforehand and get trained up. Did my evaluation right before Afghanistan, got certified, and then so when I got in country, I was ready to control, which was cool.
Yeah, and that's kind of when I came in too.
Yeah,
and you were running a lot of those operations. And as a new guy, from my perspective, like coming in and seeing you, and at that point you're like super experienced, obviously, and had the confidence about you. And like I remember you were clearing buildings, talking to aircraft, like doing all this stuff simultaneously, and I was like, damn. Like, this is a freaking GB. Like,
yeah,
you were that guy when I got to the team, man.
It was fun, dude. It was the best of times, dude. Some of the best and some of the worst of times. But yeah, I remember. I'll never forget, dude. Clearing that village with you.
Yeah, just me and you
going house to house. Yeah, just on our own, dude. Everyone else got cordon, and it's like, all right, let's go clear some buildings, dude. I'm gonna find something. Finding a little bit of heroin, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, just messing around. That was fun. But yeah, man. I mean, that trip was a tough one for sure. I think a lot of guys probably still think about that trip to this day. So, but a lot of good experiences too throughout the process.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, man. Um, awesome, man. So you get back from that trip, and then it's really, we had the Europe trip together. That was more of a fun training trip,
Yeah,
good time out in Europe. Finally, a break for you, I would say. After
yeah.
those 3 trips that you went on prior, but um, talk me through your decision to go the green and gold route, and how you ended up down at Texas A&M.
Yeah, man. So I had the COVID times, and then during the COVID times, I went to the Fox course, and then I went to SLC, and so transitioned to Fox, went to Europe, and then post Europe, I just did a lot of soul searching. I think being in that non tactical environment, being in Europe, and realizing that Afghanistan was pretty much done. Like there wasn't any more GWAT deployments going on unless I want to go hang out, on some air base. I was like, looking at my family, looking at myself, and realizing that there was a lot of pieces missing to that puzzle. And so my whole goal with coming to Texas A&M doing the green and gold thing was, it'll give me time to take a knee. We'll be close to family, and I'll also get to, rebuild essentially while achieving a goal in the process, getting my degree, commissioning, and then I can head back to the regiment, and who knows, maybe there'll be something going on then that's that'll keep us busy. So that was the mindset doing it, and then when I got here, I quickly realized that there was a lot more pieces missing to the puzzle than I had realized, and so it takes a lot of I don't know if courage is the right word, but it definitely takes a lot of strength to be able to say, that you're not doing well, mentally or physically, and that, you need to take some time to really take care of yourself. And I think I did a long, hard look. I had been pushing at that point, at least 8 years just in being at group alone, and realizing that, I can't lift my arm up, anymore, past my shoulder. I can't sit down in a chair for too long without, it hurting. I can't, do a lot of things that I physically used to do. And not only that, like my perspective on life is just kind of jaded, and my relationship with my family isn't the way that I want it. And so, it took a lot of strength to be able to sit down, and really, really, come to the realization that I needed to get taken care of, and I needed to take care of my family. And so I started doing those things. I started started with going to the doc, and then, just talking through some of the stuff, and then pretty much going to therapy, talking about things. And, and I'd say now for the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been going regularly to therapy, and just talking to somebody to be able to provide some perspective has helped a lot. It's helped pretty immensely, because there's a lot of guys that hold on to that shit, I think, and I think it starts to eat you alive, and it's just something that that you just got to go do, because if you don't, it's going to kill you one day, or you're going to kill yourself. And I started doing all that, and ended up shaking out that turns out that I'm not, physically going to be able to continue with the service. I'm not going to be able to mentally continue. And so, that's the ultimate taking a knee, I think. But, I still have something to offer. I still have my experience to offer. I can still coach and mentor the next generation of guys that want to take the same path, and then hopefully I can provide something that allows them to not make the same mistakes I did, and not miss the blind spots that I did. It's kind of like clearing a house in CQB. It's helping them see those dead spaces that I didn't even realize, those areas that I didn't clear, where there was a lot of bad shit. And so I definitely, it took me a long time to be able to swallow that pill, but I think I finally have come to the conclusion that I think my days is, being that hard charger. Not saying I'm easy to kill. Don't get it twisted, but I think those days of being that that guy or being the guy that you saw on that deployment, controlling a stack and doing clearance operations simultaneously. I just don't have the capacity for that anymore. I need to take care of my family. I need to take care of my wife, my kids. I got to take care of myself and realize that I do still have something to offer. So and leverage that. Yeah.
No, I mean, man, that you're absolutely right. It does take a lot of strength. And what you've done not only throughout your career, which is filled with a ton of experience, ton of success, ton of impact, but since leaving 10th group, getting down there, coaching, mentoring the cadets there at Texas A&M, sharing your experience with them, how you interact and mentor the individuals in the Infinite Grit community. It's clear that you're not someone that's just taking a knee. You are providing that value to other people's lives. It's like I look at you like an older brother, and you have a very unique experience. We left out a lot of the things that you had throughout that career, like obviously managing a life outside of the military, a family outside of the military, and you pursuing your education, how quickly and how dedicated you were to that, even when we were on a team, taking your freaking tests while we were in Europe and doing all kinds of stuff, like doing your labs, your chemistry labs at 8 p.m. on a freaking Thursday after we just spent all day at the CQB range. Like, there's so much to your story that we would never be able to capture in a podcast. But, through your mentorship, through the lessons learned, and through the discipline that and resilience really that you've demonstrated your whole life, you can help instill that in others. And I feel like you're doing just that. And it's super great to see your transition. And, as it progresses, that we're here for you throughout the process, man.
Hell yeah, man. I feel like Infinite Grit is definitely the one of those things that I never expected, but it's definitely becoming that thing that's becoming the new outlet for getting that popular word we like to use, fulfillment. So I want to commend you on your ability to dream up something like this and actually follow through, because there's a lot of people who talk about doing things, or they brainstorm. I mean, you saw it. You've been a part of these think tanks before, that nothing ever shakes out. And so I want to just give you commendation. If I could give you a medal, dude, I would. And I'd present it in front of the whole company, dude. And I'd pin it on your chest, dude. But
to be completely honest, man, I was gunning for you from the start, man.
You were gunning for me. Oh, okay.
So I started it. Little backstory for everybody else. Like, as we were getting out, I started to get a little bit more entrepreneurship, and we put together some think tanks, and it started with a big group of guys. There was probably 6 of us. Slowly it dwindled, and it was really just like CJ and I. And whenever we'd jump on the meetings, and it was you and I who were like trying to take it serious and like keep it on track and like going through building business plans, all this type of stuff. So when I got out and I started building this up, I got a little bit I had like 1,000 followers, just like a little bit of traction. And I remember telling Mallory, I was like, man, I need someone like CJ. I was like, man, when I was on a team with CJ and we would just like brainstorm, it was just so easy. Like, I was like, so I feel like I manifested a little bit, you eventually coming on the team. And then when I heard you were officially, getting out, I was like, yo, what are you planning on doing, dude?
Yeah, people ask me like, well, how'd you end up with Infinite Grit? And I was like, well, John kind of put it to me like this. He said, I'm not going to let you miss out on the opportunity, so you're going to work with Infinite Grit. I was like, all right, that works.
Yeah, well, we're going to build something amazing, and I always wanted a team. I loved being on the team, loved that environment. So I wanted it to be just like that with Infinite Grit. So, I see this thing as it's not just mine anymore, right? It's mine, it's yours, it's Chris's. Like, we are a team, and when I envision us building it to as big as I see, you guys are right there with me. So appreciate you being a part of it, man. I appreciate you sharing your story tonight.
Yeah, dude, hopefully I wasn't too long-winded
No,
going
it's
on.
perfect. Perfect. You crushed it.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for this heat to give up, though. Dude. That's what we need.
Yeah, for real. All right,
Ready
guys.
for the winter.
That is it. Hope you guys thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a great night. If you guys do have any questions or want to get in touch with CJ directly, please reach out to him via Instagram. We'll drop his information in the story and down in the description down below. But again, thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to you very soon.
See ya.